a suit and tie and get your hair cut way up high. Get yourself a lawyer, son. You're gonna need a real good one.
And I have some lines free for you for our real good lawyer, David Whiting, well-known Melbourne Solicitor, who can advise you on some legal problems. 1300 222 774. David, good morning.
Good morning, Virginia.
We had a little homework from last week, I think.
We did. We had Barry from Bulleen, and then we had Jill, I think, from Mordialloc. Mm-hmm. Barry was a gentleman who said that my building surveyor has had his registration cancelled. What can I do?
That's right.
Because I can't find a replacement. And Jill then rang, and she's a builder, and she said that she had a client who paid $10,000 to a building surveyor to take over the surveying of the building program, and then he lost his registration. So he lost the $10,000 and didn't move an inch. And then I got 2 emails during the week on similar problems.
Right.
So a building surveyor is a building inspector, a person who inspects the process of a building during the course of construction, from either footings or slab to frame to, I'm not very good at the building stages, but there's about 5 of them, and they get surveyed at each point. And what the VBA and the Building Act says is that you can't move to another stage until such time as you have received a certificate of inspection and approval from a licensed building surveyor. And it's the owner's responsibility to ensure that there's a building surveyor, and you can't move on without one. And so I had a chat to a couple of building surveyors, and the legislation anticipates that you might choose to change building surveyors, which I can imagine will happen in 2 situations. One is where you've engaged a company and they have nominated a building surveyor as an employee, and the building surveyor might move on and you might stay with the first company, or the building surveyor might move on and you move with the building with that person. So the answer would be that the legislation, there's nothing in the legislation that makes it difficult to change a building surveyor. The difficulty is from the building surveyor's point of view, because it's more often than not worth the angst. Imagine, if you will, that you start with a building surveyor and they see the holes that you've dug where the footings are to go, and then dies before they're filled in. Then I'm now the building surveyor. I need someone to dig them out again so I can see how deep they are. So it's just and if you can imagine also, if it happens later in the building progress where you change the building surveyor, if there's a problem with the building, a prudent lawyer would name the estate of the deceased building surveyor and the current building surveyor to make sure that you've covered it properly. So answer is that for Barry of Bulleen, there is no simple answer. It's from a building surveyor's point of view, taking on someone else's work is quite often a substantial burden. So no, there is no answer other than please.
Yeah, please. Yep. And our other problem?
No, that was the only one we had. We was from 4 different sources.
Ah, yes, of course. Okay.
Yep.
Well, if you've got a problem and you'd like to get it solved, David Whiting is your man. Melbourne Solicitor, 1300 222 774. Let me just quickly read this, though, just before we go to legal calls, because it feeds into what we all hover on the brink of if we're not careful. Esther has texted, I'm at Malvern Central and so many people are not checking in. How will we ever get control of the virus this way? I've got to amplify Esther's message this morning, and with a vengeance. If you don't check in, if you don't wear your mask, and if you don't get tested when you have symptoms, as sure as eggs are eggs, in 6 weeks' time, maybe even a shorter period of time, 4, you'll have that dreaded situation of that awful press conference being called again and the so-called snap lockdown being instituted as well. That is the only way so that infections can be quickly followed up and connected and people isolated and quarantined. If you have the symptoms, so you can be quickly quarantined and your contacts contacted quickly as well. You have to do it. I understand that compliance or that feeling of wanting to comply just might be at a low ebb right now because everyone's sick of it. I'm sick of it. But honestly, if there's another lockdown called again, it won't be a failing of contact tracing. They're actually getting that done really quite well now. It'll be because there's not enough of us vaccinated, and that's a bigger problem. And because we as individuals aren't doing the right thing, I beg of you, do the right thing. No one wants that another lockdown to be announced. Hazel in Mornington, good morning.
Good morning, Virginia and David. Thank you for taking my call.
No worries, go ahead.
I'm ringing on behalf of my son and his wife. In 2019, they engaged a venue to hold a wedding reception, which was to take place in June 2020.
Do you mean fiancé?
They
Son
are
and
now
fiancé, yes.
married now, yes.
Oh, they're married now, are they?
Now, yes.
Oh, okay.
They've just delayed the celebration.
Yeah, okay, got it.
Yes, that's exactly right. 2020, June 2020, it was postponed to June 2021. Of course, now we're in lockdown. It can't take place again.
Mm-hmm.
We just want to know how long they can keep making them postpone it.
The postponing, well, they could always abandon it, I suppose, now that they're married, Hazel, but that's very unkind.
Well, they've paid 3/4 of the cost, and the venue is not wanting to let them abandon it without keeping that money.
Hazel, VCAT and I have a slight difference of opinion in relation to that. There have been some recent decisions in VCAT over the last sort of 6 weeks that talk about a situation where the particular event, so let's say it was to be today but couldn't take place, has been frustrated as a result of COVID, and therefore you could get your money back. Right? Today's a bad example because the question would be, if I want a venue for 100 and I can only take 50, is that a frustrating event? One of the things that you might consider is making an application to VCAT for to argue that the event has been frustrated and we'd like our money back, and you might then revisit the concept later on rather than sort of keep postponing. So, Hazel, there is no easy answer. What you've got to do is see if COVID is in this particular instance a frustrating event, and if it is, just ask for your 75% back. All right. Now, I can say that there's some. I've also seen a couple of VCAT decisions that talk about an expedited process at VCAT for COVID hearings. I've only seen it referred to in decisions at VCAT. I haven't seen it referred to in their website, but they are trying to do as many applications as they can just on the paperwork.
Okay.
Right, to get rid of their backlog.
Good luck. Maybe that's helpful. Mick in Port Melbourne. Now, Mick has a problem that I reckon is probably shared by a lot of people, and I don't know what you can do about it. Hi, Mick. Go for it.
Thanks, David, Virginia. Look, I live in a 1970s apartment with thin concrete slabs. I've been there for about 20 years, and 10 years ago, previous owners installed floorboards. It's been an ongoing issue, and I have proposed a policy of no floorboards, but not respectively.
Well, what's the ongoing issue, Mick?
Look, I just hear wherever the person is in the apartment above me, even four-legged animals.
You can hear all the footfalls.
All the footfalls, everywhere. So, and obviously, I think it's probably been exacerbated in the last 18 months with, everyone being home a lot more. I have suggested getting an acoustic specialist, perhaps to engage with how we might suggest people do things.
Mick, there is no easy answer. I've had 3 or 4 of these over time.
Yeah.
And the question is really whether or not the fact that you can hear it doesn't of itself make it an ongoing nuisance that would enable you to take your neighbour to court.
Yep.
All right. Now, I do know that for some kinds of flooring, it is possible to put in insulation under the floorboards.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't know that you would ever be able to persuade someone to do it retrospectively, because I imagine it would be quite expensive. So I've had a couple of them, one in a beautiful property in East Melbourne where the question was, the man upstairs has got floorboards, and every time they move around the property, like you in Port Melbourne, same issue.
Yep.
And we didn't have an easy answer unless you start getting an acoustic engineer who comes and measures the noise in your place. The difficulty is going to be is that they are normal domestic noises occurring at normal domestic intervals.
Yep.
So one of the other things that you might do is find out whether it would be possible to insulate from your side. And you then get to the question of, was it appropriate for me to insulate to prevent someone else's noise, or should they stop it at source? Don't know.
Yep.
No easy answer, Mick, but I start an acoustic engineer, see if you can get the Owners Corporation to engage an acoustic engineer to consider it from both above the slab and below the slab.
Mm-hmm. I have suggested that, and I've actually got costing, so I might do that as the next step to push that through as well.
Okay. Well, good luck, and we hope that's useful. Mary in Mount Waverley, what's going on?
Oh, hi. Hi, Virginia and David. Thanks for taking my call.
It's okay.
Last week we had a bike stolen from an apartment complex, from the common area, the parking area, and the area where they keep where they have the bike racks. And I just wanted to know what liability does the Owners Corporation have for a theft like this?
Probably none, Mary. Probably none. It would depend on what the Owners Corporation did to the members when they put in the racks. So if they simply put in, here's a place where you can store your bikes if you want to, I wouldn't have thought there would be any liability.
Right.
Yes, in the same as it would be if someone stole your car from your car parking space at the units, you wouldn't have expected the OC to have any responsibility, unless you're talking about perimeter security in the development that you're in.
Yes, there is. There is perimeter security.
Well,
yes, because I'm talking about an apartment building that has underground car parks.
Yes.
So you have designated car spots, but of course the bike racks are on various levels, and they're not designated to you. You just have to find one.
Then I would have thought none, unless you're going to get to the point where no one can enter or leave the complex at all without being fully identified. And I just don't see that happening.
Security has been tightened because there have been thefts. The thing is, there's only one, as with most apartment complexes, there's only one external gate, which people use their fob to open. It opens slowly, obviously.
So your other option...
And then it closes slowly, and that permits people then, that can allow someone to walk in and get into the car park, and then,
It's a balance of speed and safety, Mary, but the other thing that you need to consider would be whether you might put in cameras.
There are security cameras. Apparently the Owners Corporation, there are cameras, and we just want to know, do we have a right to see the footage? We've notified the police, obviously.
Then I would be making a report to the Owners Corporation. You've got a dispute with the Owners Corporation. You'll know within a few hours as to when the bicycle went. And what you want is this: if no one looks at the security cameras, if no one does any vetting, why are you paying for them? That would be the approach I would take. I'm reporting a theft in this period of time. I'd like to look at the cameras for that period
and see how you go once you get the response from the Owners Corporation. Then now we've got a question here from Glenys, who's in Warragul. What's going on there, Glenys?
Oh, hello. Thank you, Virginia. Thank you, David. The problem is that we're getting rainwater runoff from the unit next to the unit that we own. Now, both units are tenanted, and what's happening is between the units there are two adjoining garages, right, with a wall between, obviously. But when heavy rain comes, there is a sloping path at the back of the next door unit, and the rainwater comes down there. There's nothing to stop that water or take it into a drain or anything, so it goes into the carport garage, I'll call it, of the unit next door, and then it comes under the dividing wall into our tenants' carport garage.
Glenys, how old is the building?
Oh, gosh, there you have me, but it's not.
But how long have you had it?
Oh, we've had it for about 3 years.
Okay.
Now, we've never had a previous tenant report any problem, but the two adjoining tenants get on quite well, and speaking to the tenant next door, which we were able to, and indeed were invited in to see where the problem was coming from, but we gathered that he was a bit unwilling to approach his landlord, I think just because he felt perhaps his tenancy would be
affected in some way. Glenys, there's two questions. The issue is really in the Water Act and the unreasonable flow of water.
You're right.
And so you would depend upon how big the expanse of concrete was that the water's coming across. and kind of what the volumes are. So it's really, the expectation is that you'll dispose of your own water.
Yes.
And then there's a Water Act talks about about unreasonable flows.
Right.
So really it would be if there's water coming onto the path other than from rainwater, so rainwater that's landed somewhere else and come onto the path and then into the garage and then into your garage,
yes,
that's where your problem is. So
yes,
rather than engage with the tenant next door, I don't know, I would be coming and engaging with the owner next door.
Yes, we haven't taken this step.
Then I would be going to the owner of the property next door and saying, "There's all of these water flows are coming from your property."
Yes, we actually did see, the exact nature of the problem because of the slope. It is just a normal access path behind the unit, so not huge widths of concrete or anything, but the downward slope just takes it into the carport garage, I said, and into ours. And we can see what the solution is as well, that at the end of that path there needs to be a small trench dug and
So you might need to go and have a conversation there.
Yeah, I think it's a conversation with the owner next door, not the tenant next door.
Okay, so have that conversation and see how you go. Fiona in Seaford, good morning.
Good morning.
Go ahead.
Good morning, David, too. Thanks for taking my call. We have had a beautiful dwarf gum that was fully grown, 10 years old, in our front yard, incorrectly chopped down by a power company. They've cut down 2/3 when they were meant to be 2 doors up.
Wow.
So we are really devastated because my partner planted it when we had the house, and it's fully grown. He chose that lovely lemon-scented dwarf gum so that it would grow to a height of 8 to 10 metres, so that it wouldn't go near the power lines. And on Wednesday...
Fiona, you have a claim for compensation against the tree chopper. But the company that chopped your tree down, because but I would also be talking to the Essential Services Ombudsman, because they are the people because we don't know whether the error was by the chopping down company or the person who ordered the chopping down. So we don't know if it's the energy company for directing them to the wrong address or whether it's the company which did the chopping down, and you would be entitled to compensation, and if from no one else, then from the company that chopped it down.
So we contacted the energy company who did send the person out, and from their paperwork they have shown that it was actually meant to go a couple of doors up, and we've gone to our neighbours and they've got the notice.
Fiona. So in the paperwork at the energy company, they were sent to go to number 1, and you in fact, for example, live at number 5. Is that what?
Yep.
So it's your responsibility is with the company who did the chopping down, and they will have insurance. They won't be allowed to do the work by the energy company unless they're insured.
All right. So first phone call goes to David?
The people who did the chopping down.
Okay, good.
Right, so it's an action in trespass and for damages.
Right, okay. And as you described, should be reasonably straightforward if the paperwork is there saying, no, sorry, we went to the wrong home.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And you should get the tree replaced.
Yeah, indeed. Charlotte in Gisborne, what's going on?
Oh, good morning. We've got a creek or stormwater creek running through our property, and due to the storm, it was the worst flooding we'd seen in the time we've been here, and it's taken one of our fences away with it, and it can't be repaired. It will need to be replaced.
Mm-hmm.
Charlotte, is this a fence between you and a neighbour?
No, us and the street.
Okay, so your front fence is gone or your side fence is gone?
Yeah, so a creek, a front fence. A creek runs through our property, which is a stormwater system, and more housing estates are being built, so they're increasing water every year when you have a storm or heavy rainfall.
Yes.
And Western Water, we understand we don't actually own the creek. Western Water owns that. Our land is to the boundary of the bank, I suppose you'd say. And they do no maintenance on the creek. So there's a lot of debris that gets built up, and other plants and blackberries, etc., growing through it. And so there was a huge amount of debris, which with the flooding of the creek, which went into our neighbour's yard as well, all the debris built up against the fence and the weight of the water, and that has damaged
Charlotte, the general principle is that the obligation to fence does not affect, doesn't attach to councils and state government. Whether it attaches to water authorities, I know for Melbourne Water and the main water companies it doesn't. I wouldn't think it would for Western Water.
Right.
So I think the obligation to fence will be yours, but can I take it as homework and come back next week?
That'd be great.
Okay.
Would general insurance not cover that?
It should be covered by your household insurance, yes. But the question will be, what liability, if any, does the authority have?
But if you can get it replaced and covered by insurance, does that solve the problem for you?
Oh, well, we're concerned that our premiums will increase. So, for example, our neighbour is unable to insure their house because of a floodplain. But, obviously the fence may not be worth the insurance claim. We're just trying to work through whether Western Water have any responsibility because they don't maintain the creek, which is an ongoing problem.
I imagine, Charlotte, that it's a post and wire fence anyway, isn't it?
Yes,
Okay.
We're in the acreage,
Yep. All right, well, that's his homework, so do listen in next week. Thank you so much. Marion in Northcote, I think you might be our last call this morning. Hi, go ahead.
Oh, hello. Thanks for taking the call. We have a form in front of us for protection work response notice.
A Form 8.
Yes, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Our neighbours, solicitors or whatever, want us to sign this so that they can demolish our wall, which they erected some years ago, about 8 years ago, which attaches or sits beside what was an adjoining wall along one part of our property.
Yes.
And they want to prop that up in order to demolish some of the work they did then, and then to do another renovation, which is more extensive and so on. We're very anxious about signing anything in relation to these neighbours because of difficulties we had the last time that they renovated.
So, Marion, for everybody else's point of view, a building surveyor says if there's going to be some building work, do other people's properties need to be protected? And if there is, then you send a notice to the adjoining owner which says, we propose to undertake these protection works and we have this insurance, and what we want you to do is consent to us undertaking these works. The interesting thing in this process, Marion, is that nowhere in the Building Act does it allow you to put the protection. Are they entitled to put the protection works on someone else's property? So they'll want to put up some kind of temporary fence, and I imagine that they'll want to put up some kind of temporary fence on your property so that they can get access to both sides of the wall. So what you might like to do, and I've seen one where someone wants to build a very big hole so that they can put a multi-storey block of units next to somebody's house. So there are issues in relation to what are called dilapidation surveys to see whether what condition your house is, to see whether that needs to be fixed, or from your point of view, it just may be to ensure that none of the building works cause damage to the garden area at your place. So what I would suggest you do, I'd be interested in how extensive the work was. I'd be interested in exactly what protection works they're proposing, because more often than not, the protection works are badly explained, and you're also entitled to see that there's the existence of insurance. So I think most protection work notices are poorly completed because they don't adequately describe what the protection works are going to be and how long they're going to be for, and you can say no. All right?
Okay.
Right.
All right.
And if we
just quickly.
If we said no, could they go ahead anyway?
Oh, no, they can't get access to your property, and they need to go back to the building surveyor. Well, how can we get this work done without impacting on the neighbour? And that's going to be, in your situation, very hard.
Well, sounds like you're holding the cards there. Good to have your call, and great to see you, David. A little bit of homework. We'll see you next week.
Indeed.
David Whiting there, who helps you with legal problems. Lots of comments coming in. This is interesting, though, following our legal discussion. It's unsigned, but it says on text, I wish this segment was more about social justice issues rather than middle-class property owners and landlords trying to get free advice and skimp on some legal fees. There are vulnerable people out there who really need help. Well, this section and this conversation is yours. It's your opportunity to call in. If you have such a question or if you need assistance, call in. The number each Tuesday is 1300 222 774. It's first come, first best. Is that how you say it? Best dressed? Oh, something like that. So if you have such a query or you want to raise an issue like that or get an issue addressed and answered, then call in, because this time of the day is absolutely yours.